What's going on, everyone? Today, I'm going to be letting you all know what my favorite bike rides are in Boston. This is actually a place I have lived and biked a ton. And a lot of the videos on my channel are me looking into other cities that I haven't necessarily lived and biked in yet, and trying to get a look into them through the online resources that we have. My ultimate goal with this channel is really to bring on local experts like you potentially, and interview you about what it's like to bike in your city. In which case, if you're interested in doing that for your city, there's a link in the description down below that I would really appreciate you filling out. But Boston is a place that I have some really good expertise on, and can definitely help you out as far as if you're moving there or maybe you live there and you're just looking for some new bike rides to do. So let's dive right into it. First, I want to look at the main veins of bike infrastructure that I would consider in Boston. Now, I lived in Somerville, so that's right here near Cambridge. It's 3.5, 4 miles to get into Boston. It would take me about a 15, 20-minute bike ride to get there. And the path I would probably spend my most time on was the Minuteman Bikeway. And this is a 10-mile rail trail, which is fully separated from auto traffic. It's made of an old retired railroad and goes through some very historical towns. I mean, look at that, those spring flowers. That is insane. Takes you along lakes, along meadows. It is just an objectively beautiful bike ride. But not only that, it's also kind of a stepping point to some other rail trails, like the Reformatory Branch and the narrow gauge rail trail. Each of those are just a few miles, but they do connect you with some other things. So that is a main vein that you should definitely be aware of in Boston. And if you live in Boston, you probably already know about it. If you don't, that's okay. Now you do. Then there's a Charles River bike path, which I spent about 3 or 4 months during a summer internship commuting along this bike path, dodging geese. And it is just beautiful, taking you along one of the most iconic parts of Boston, which is the Charles River. And honestly, I would say, one of my favorite parts about river cities in general is that most of them do have room around the river for greenways and bike paths, because traditionally those areas have been preserved for parks and things of that nature. And also it floods right near there, right? So you're going to want to back up your civilization a little bit from there. With that being said, the bike path runs all along the river. A lot of cities are going to have these trails, but the Charles River bike path is special. And it's actually going to be part of a bike path, a continuous rail trail that goes all the way out to Northampton. I think it's going to be over 100 miles. It's called, I believe, the Central Mass Rail Trail. Mass Rail Trail. Let's see. Mass Central Rail Trail. It's going to be 104 miles from Boston to Northampton. Currently, 51 miles are open, and 19 miles are in unclear ownership. So they're working on it every day. Maybe not every day, but consistently. And you can kind of see. So it goes along the river and then kind of picks up in Weston Wayland. There's some sections out here too, like in Amherst and in Northampton. That is another main vein. Another one to take note is in that biketosea.org. I believe that's the website. Biketothesea.org. To the sea. Yep. Biketothesea.org. Their whole mission was to allow you to bike to the ocean from Boston. And gosh, the ocean around Boston, like it is beautiful. And I'll show you some pictures in a little bit, but this is another main vein, especially if you live in Malden or Saugus, to bike in. I wish it was a little bit better connected in actually going into the city. Right now it's not, but they're working on that, I know. And they're currently, through the Green Line extension, they're extending this bike path here all the way to East Cambridge, which is going to be super, super helpful. There's some other paths like the Southwest Corridor Park. And there's also the Emerald Necklace, which is starts in Brookline, and it's not popping up here, but I'll show you where it is on Google Maps. So it really starts near the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, Fenway Kenmore, and goes all the way down through here, through Olmsted Park, to the Arnold Arboretum. And then you can link that up with the Southwest Corridor Park. But that is just a beautiful historical ride through Boston as well, and through a bunch of different neighborhoods. All right, how much time? This is going to be a 15-minute video. I'm 5 minutes in. So those are the main veins that I want you to be aware of. And, strategically, if you can position yourself near those, you're going to be much more accessible to the bike trails. There's a lot more bike lanes that are available to you in Boston, and they're building more literally every day. Like, they're doing very, very well as far as progress there, and they've got a long way to go. But I encourage you to, look at through the bike lanes feature on Google Maps, go to Street View and just look at a bunch of different opportunities here, like Beacon Street with some nice painted bike lanes. Some of these are also parts are raised from the street. Yeah, Boston's got it going on there, and I feel really fortunate to have spent a lot of time there biking around. It's a special place. As far as mountain biking, which is one of my favorite ways to experience biking in Boston. So there's two really, I'd say, well, I lived in Somerville, right? So I live north of the river. There's also a huge population base south of the river. And that opens up some other opportunities for riding in areas south of the river. But the most riding that I did, so these are my favorite spots, the Middlesex Fells and the Western Greenway in Belmont. So let me just show you how far, if you live in Somerville or Cambridge, just how far it is to bike to these spots. And I think you'll be pretty impressed. Okay, so let's see, Belmont, Mass, to really, you're going to, when you're jumping on the trails here, you're going to like right there to, yeah, let's go from Harvard Square in Cambridge. About 5 miles, a 30-minute bike ride. And if you're coming from Boston, what's nice is you can, like, downtown Boston, it's about 8 miles, definitely further. So, but the ride there is great. It's about, so the Western Greenway, this is a 4.1 mile section, 1.2 miles. When I would go from Somerville right around here out and then loop it around to the Charles River bike path that goes back along the river, it would be about 22 miles, I believe, just about 22 miles. And then the other spot is in Winchester, Medford, Melrose, Malden. It's the Middlesex Fells. So let's take some directions from Fells to, let's go from Harvard Square again. About, well, that's driving. It's more direct if you bike. About 4 miles, about 30 minutes. So what I would do is, again, I lived in this kind of area of Somerville right here. I would bike to Middlesex Fells and to the Western Greenway all the time. And the way I would like to bike to the Western Greenway is I would take the Somerville Community Path. I would go through here and jump on the Fitchburg Cutoff Path. And then I would bike on the road for just a little bit and then jump on over to the Western Greenway. Let's look at the Rock Meadow Conservation Area and kind of look at through some of the video pictures here. I mean, it's beautiful. Like, it is really, really pretty. And yeah, I had some amazing memories here. That's Rock Meadow. Let's take a look at like Beaver Brook Reservation here. Rushing water in the spring. And then what about more towards Beaver Brook North? So what you're looking at, some very wooded areas, but also some open areas, which you don't see a lot of open areas oftentimes in New England. There's just so much. There's some deer right there. I mean, this is right near the city, y'all. Like, it's so cool. As far as the Middlesex Fells, let's take a look at kind of what that looks like. This is probably so Belmont, the Western Greenway, a little bit less challenging riding than the Middlesex Fells. The Fells can get quite intense at parts, and there's stuff for every level of riding. But the Middlesex Fells is definitely very chunky, very rocky, like a lot of places in New England. But it's got great natural elevation, and the trails here are definitely very natural. Like they're not some geese. They're not like manufactured trails like you would see in a place like Bentonville, Arkansas, where I'm at right now, where everything's like machine cut and really tailored towards mountain biking. These are really rugged natural trails, but are maintained by an organization called NEMBA, New England Mountain Bike Association. Definitely consider joining them as a member. And yeah, like I said, all types of riding there. I would go for like a 16-mile total ride from near Davis Square up to the Fells, do a loop, and then bike back. And it'd be about 16 miles. So those are two of my favorites. Another favorite was going out to Walden Pond. So what I would do is I would go along the Minuteman bike path. I would go west towards on the Reformatory Branch Trail, which goes by like Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, which is just beautiful. And park system in Greater Boston is just absolutely amazing. And then you make it to Walden Pond. You go through Concord. And where is Walden Pond? Let's find it. Right here, Walden Pond, where Henry David Thoreau went to the woods because he wished to live deliberately, to front only essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach. And not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. That is what his famous quote was. All right, I got about 3 more minutes. So that was a really great ride I love to do. Also, you got to remember the commuter rail aspect. You can jump the commuter rail with all these purple lines. It takes you out like 40 to 50 miles in each direction. It can take you all the way to Providence. It can take you to Plymouth, to Rockport. There's mountain biking in Rockport, Gloucester. I would take the low line out to Russell Mill. So you can if you overlay the MBTA commuter rail map and MTB project, you can find some other places to ride. And then also another favorite ride was you bike out from wherever you are along this green path right here. Bike2see.org is the one that really advocated for it. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it goes through Malden and Saugus. And then you bike out to the tip of Nahant. And the cool thing is cars can't park here unless you live there. So bikes can get here. You go to East Point, and the cliff views are absurd. And even like light pollution is less there. You've got just beautiful rock outcroppings. I mean, it is very, very special. You got to go there. This is probably my favorite destination bike ride, where it's like, I want to get to a point and just enjoy the view. I absolutely love that. So yeah, I also want to highlight northeastbikepacker.com. Andy, I actually went on a bike packing trip with him, and he just has a ton of rides that he's created and documented around Massachusetts, and is a really helpful resource for anyone that's looking to also do some bike touring around Greater Boston. But yeah, so that's kind of 3, 4, 5 of my favorite rides and a little bit more about biking in Boston. It's a great place to bike. Even though it gets really cold, you can still bike in the winter and enjoy it. You just got to dress for it and have the right equipment. With that being said, if you have any specific questions about biking in Boston, please don't hesitate to reach out. And still, even though I've lived there and trying to bring my expertise, if you live in Boston, I would love to bring a diverse set of ideas to this channel. Would love to potentially interview you about your favorite places to bike in Boston, get a different perspective. So thanks for watching, everyone. Got a ton more videos just like this one on the channel. Have a good one.